Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our panel today. We're so glad to see all of you. My name is Wendy Brinford Jones. I am an independent publicist. My company is called Hello Wendy. I started in this wonderful music business right after college in 1992, revealing my age, extremely unladylike. But just to give you some sort of background on me, in the 90s, I worked at various record labels, including Virgin Records, IRS Records, Relativity Recordings, and other places. And, I love this crazy business. It has changed so much, so radically since I first started, from the days of, Rolodexes and faxing to emails and no more overnighting those color slides, which is crazy. And I haven't been to Americana Fest since 2019. And I said, you know what? Darn it, I want to come back and bring some new friends and some old friends and let's talk about PR and how we navigate in this current age, because there's a lot of noise out there. You look at your phone, the social media, I'm sure you have headaches looking at it. So, let's talk about it. So before we start and introduce my fellow panelists, I just would love to get a read of the room and ask you, can you raise your hand if you're an independent musician or an artist and let us know? Okay, great. Musicians in the house. Do we have some managers, talent managers in the house? Wonderful. How about any booking agents? All right. Wow, we're well represented. Do we have any journalists in the house? All right. And do we have any folks who are just like, I don't know, I want to see what the heck this thing is? Right on. Okay, great. You are also welcome. So we're going to start at the end here to my left with Jay Coyle. He's going to introduce himself, and then we're going to follow along so you can meet our other panelists.
Fantastic. Hello, everybody. My name is Jay Coyle. I run a record label called Propeller Sound Recordings. I also run an artist and management and project management services called Propeller Sound Services. After a stint in major labels in the mid-aughts, I kind of went independent and was swimming upstream against the majors after I left that. I found myself kind of consulting and teaching. I've been a teacher at Berkeley Online, fellow student, former student over there, which is very cool to see in person, for 10 years. Had the privilege of teaching music industry, music business, and artist management. Where I sit is in a unique position because I now run a record label, but for the last 17, 18 years, I've consulted with artists and independent labels, helping them try to figure out and navigate how to swim upstream, basically, and how to find paths and how to find new ways to go. I've been to Americana many times before, and I've lived in Nashville now for 18 years. I just very fortunate to be here, but more importantly, I think, as I tell my students all the time, it's always the right time to get into music. So it doesn't matter what the industry is going on, it doesn't matter when anybody tells you what's going on. It's you finding your path and you finding your way to go forward. So panels like this are pretty inspiring to me, only because I think the conversation I've had for over a decade is PR still valid? And I'm one of the advocates that definitely think it is, but it comes with a little asterisk next to it. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today and glad that you guys are here.
Hi, I'm Marissa Moss. Feel like I don't know where to look in this very light room, so I'm just gonna continually scan. I'm here as a journalist, so I'm getting the pitches that we were talking about. I live in Nashville. I write for all kinds of places, Rolling Stone, New York Times. I run a country music newsletter called Don't Rock the Inbox with Natalie Weiner, who's talking to Hooray for the Riff Raff somewhere over here. But yeah, gotten lots of pitches and worked with lots of publicists over the years, so here to talk about that side of things.
I'm Kira Annalise. This is my husband, Willie Neal. We are in a band called the Waymores. We tour about 200 days a year, and we do all of the booking ourselves.
Do everything in-house.
Other than what Wendy does for us when we have an album coming out or some tour press that needs to be done, we do everything in-house. So hopefully we're here to offer you an artist's perspective on how to navigate that aspect of things.
I'm Willie.
My name is Jim Flamia. I run a company called All Eyes Media here in Nashville. I'm an independent publicist, basically. I worked in New York City for years, independent companies. I worked at Universal Republic, and I moved down here to run the press department of Lost Highway Records back in the early 2000s. Best gig ever. And those are my two label gigs. Everything else I've done prior to that and after that, I've had All Eyes Media since 2010. Worked at Shorefire Media, JLM Public Relations, a lot of different places. And back to what Wendy said, we're around the same age. back when we used to send slides through the mail and fax everything, and press releases were sent in envelopes. And it's kind of interesting, invigorating, challenging, and terrifying how quickly everything changes, and figuring out how to navigate through it. I can go down the laundry list of various projects, isn't that, but I won't bore you. But the question of, is PR still relevant? And we'll talk about it on this panel. I think it very much is, for a lot of reasons, and not with my own self-interest. But we can break that down a little bit more.
Great. Awesome introductions. Thanks, everybody. So when I speak to civilians and tell them I do PR or publicity, oh, is that publishing? So, just very basically, what I would like just Jim to address for us, what is the difference between PR, radio promotion, social media, et cetera? Because a lot of independent artists, some people come and think, oh, well, the publicity firm, they're going to do everything, just like a manager is going to do everything for me. So, Jim, what is it exactly that we do? And let's talk a little bit about what are you looking for in clients, and how do we manage expectations of artists as well as label managers and other folks? So, would love to hear about that.
Well, that's 2 hours right there. In all honesty, the short answer to what is PR differentiate between the other areas is, the shortest answer is public relations is dealing with editorial-based content, stuff, writing. So whether you're dealing with print, online, television, podcasts, whatever it is, it's an editorial-based thing. It isn't like marketing, and this is not a fair way to describe marketing, but in marketing, you get a budget. Again, this is unfair. You get a budget, you usually use part of that budget for various things. There's a transaction, there's something tangible in return. You can judge you can judge some of your marketing, and there's other areas. Or you can judge radio by hiring someone to do radio. How many spins do we get? You can quantify that in different ways. Editorial is very different, and it changes all the time. It's subjective. You can't control the nature of what somebody's thinking, what their tastes are. We go down a little more later about how we decide how to approach things, but that's the shortest version of what is PR and what's the difference. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years. I still have family members that go, you work in radio, you work on this. Or if I say, oh, you got this article in Billboard, like, where's your name? We are the behind the scenes people, and some of the behind the scenes people. And we're basically the conduit between the artist and all forms of media, not social media. I want to make sure, because that word is thrown in there, it often gets confused. But we might work with the social media people to help them, create something they want to put out there, or make sure the verbiage is correct, or tell them not to put that out there for various reasons. But that's the shortest version of what PR is compared to radio or promotion and social media and marketing and booking and things like that.
Very, very well said. If you want if you want something 100%, you book an ad, because PR is a gamble.
Right.
The only guarantees in life are death and taxes. So we need to focus on expectations and whatnot. If anybody, yes, I was going to say, if anyone would like to add, that's wonderful. Go ahead.
Leaning on my teaching history, it's interesting to me because every year there's a new batch of students that come in, and I teach all ages, all walks of life, more importantly from literally all over the world, because it's an online portal. But consistently, there's been a conflation of, if that's even a word, conflating the concept of PR. Most of the students that I talk to, when I ask them, we have a whole lesson plan on publicity, and I talk about PR, so many students will say, well, my plan for PR is social media. I said, well, you're missing the point of what PR is. PR, especially as said earlier by Jim, it's like editorial. So many people, and it doesn't matter their age, so it's not something that someone says, oh, it's the younger generation. Just people with the advent of social media and being how we communicate, and more importantly, how people get news and how people hear information, they figure out that, oh, then social media is pretty much what I can use for publicity. And so I literally pull out what hair I have left, that's why I wear a hat, and have to remind them over and over again. It's like, no. The whole point is the editorial piece and telling the story. And so my challenge is always to tell people, it's even not as easy just as editorial, it's as, what is your story? And I think that's the big challenge for people to kind of grasp is, editorial by way of telling the story. Because I guess the harsh thing I have to tell most musicians, it's like, it's not about your music. They go, what? It has nothing to do with your music. I said, it will be about your music, and somebody can fall in love with you for music, but publicity at its core is about the telling of the story. So it's just most people have a hard time trying to, okay, how do I approach that? And that's the nuance about how each artist is different.
Cool. I'm going to go off script for a moment and ask Marissa a question before I go into Kira.
Wow.
Marissa,
script.
how do you feel, and I'm sure this has happened to you in your career, when an independent musician reaches out to you, finds your contact info, contacts you directly versus a publicist? Does this bother you? Does it not matter? How do you feel about that if someone's pitching you and they're the artist and not their representative?
Can you guys hear me? It doesn't bother me. No, it doesn't bother me at all. It's, I mean, I'm freelance. I have a bunch of places that I write for fairly regularly and have relationships with, but I'm technically freelance. So, and there are a lot of us out there, especially in the climate right now. There's a lot of freelance writers out there. And we're just like you're talking about, we're looking for a story. So it's all in the approach, really. It's, I've gotten DMs on Instagram. I've gotten people finding my cell phone number somehow and texting me at 10 o'clock at night that I have absolutely no idea how they found it. I've had every means of communicate, random phone calls, letters, like everything. Nothing beats a well thought out email that shows that you've researched the person that you're writing to. So if you're writing to me and you're saying, hey, can you, I have an artist, I have an album coming out. Can you pitch this for insert publication that I've never written for a type of story that I've never written? Anything like that shows that you don't understand what I do. And I'm looking for stories. I'm looking for things to pitch to my editors. I'm looking for trends. I'm looking for all those things. And I do read those emails. I do read emails from artists. I know most freelance writers do, if they're coming to us in a thoughtful way. And it's all in the communication and how you do it. So don't send a DM. Don't send a Twitter message. Don't find someone's phone number and call them randomly when they're, making dinner. Whatever that is, send a thoughtful email that shows that you know what we do and how we do it and what we look for, and that is very valuable.
Great, yeah, and if you're going to be pitching Marissa or someone, see what kind of artist she writes about. If it's a boy noisy punk rock band, might not be what she's writing about all the time. Or just right. So you just see what she's been current with and see if you fit what might work for her. So Kira, having said that now. Because Kira and Willie, man, they do everything. When did you say, this is it, we need to get some outside help? When did that come to you and how?
It should have come a lot sooner than when we chose. The advice that we were originally given came before my time. It was a friend of Willie's, said that a quarter out of every dollar that you make as an artist should be going toward PR. That it's one of the most important things. We didn't listen.
We did listen, but we didn't have a quarter to spare.
So we chose on our second album as the Waymores. We both had separate careers before we formed this band. Our second album as the Waymores was when we reached out to Wendy, and it really is. I feel like as an independent artist, it is your responsibility to make every show, every song, every album an event, and in order to do that, I feel like you do need some outside help. You do need your reach as an independent, and only doing social media posts is only going to go so far. You do need somebody, professional, somebody outside help in order to make those things events, successful events. And I feel like our reach after we hired Wendy was so spectacular compared to what we could do just by ourselves.
It was absolutely that. It definitely took us to another rung on the ladder. It's very important. And one of the things that we learned too, when you try to do that, because we do most everything in-house except for what Wendy does for us, we found that is a very tight group of people. A lot of, if you're reaching out to some of these publications and stuff on your own, they are slammed with other stuff. So it's easier. They're going to pay attention to an established publicist, somebody coming in, as to where your request or whatever might just get put at the bottom. But, it definitely, we really she got us to another rung on the ladder, and we were amazed at how much, our notoriety grew and how much, people. But another thing I wanted to talk about too, he was talking about creating the story. That's exactly what Wendy did for us. Our husband and wife, to be honest, we were together 16 years before we ever got married. But Wendy, everybody kept calling us husband and wife, and we told Wendy, "Is like, we're not husband." She goes, "Shut your mouth, just go with just let them call you husband and wife."
That's how I talked him into marrying me, actually. It was like, it's in paper, you have to do it.
But, she helped paint this George and Tammy, not as toxic, this non-toxic George and Tammy story that really people love to follow. So she really did help create a story. And he's absolutely right about that. That is,
It doesn't
from an
matter.
outside perspective, someone else calling you that, makes people take it authentic. It's not you calling yourself. Here's an example. So many people out there call themselves outlaw country. And it's like, and you listen, it's like, that is just pop country on the radio. There's nothing, you calling yourself an outlaw doesn't make you an outlaw. But when somebody else writes about them and goes, "Oh, this guy is outlaw," so then it's more legitimate, So it doesn't look like it looks better when someone's creating your story for you.
But let it also be said that these two, they're based in Atlanta, suburban Atlanta, and they work their butts off. It's not like they did a few gigs and we just did, we play Atlanta like every month or so. They really worked. They got their name out there a bit before they approached me because they're like, well, we are kicking a bit of steam here. We do need some help because we're going to these different markets. And, they've toured coast to coast many a time. So
We felt like our reach doing it indie, like DIY style, had reached its limit.
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's, I think, the most important time, because you can do a lot. You can get really creative. Our first album, just to get our Spotify numbers up, sorry, Brian, we promised, we said, show us that you've listened to the song, that you've shared the song, share it on social media, tag us, and we'll send you a gift. Send us send us your address. So we hand wrote lyrics and sent that to people as a gift for sharing. So we got very creative in trying to build our following,
Little
trying to
incentive.
build our spread before hiring Wendy, but still the difference in
And fans
what the
was-
two albums did.
And fans,
These are great tips rather than if somebody says, "Oh, follow me on," this is when I used to be more active on Twitter or whatever, "Oh, follow me," and then sends me an immediate link to follow them on Facebook. That's a massive turnoff. So it's good to hear, from artists, what are things to do to get people
Oh, we got
interested.
crazy creative.
Yeah, I mean,
and we would do these handwritten lyrics, and I'm an illustrator too, so I would do a little drawing at the bottom. And
nice.
fans would send, frame it, hang it on the wall,
And then you have
and
another
send us
social media
pictures of it,
post.
And it's, so this is one more thing to share.
So-
It's,
Yeah, so Jim, having done professional PR and so well for quite a long time, like me, what would you suggest to folks, in the audience here who might not be able to afford our services just yet? What would you say? What are things they can do while they're building and working to save up money to hire, an all eyes campaign, that sort of thing?
Well, to build on what they're saying here, first and foremost, you have to be your own advocate. That this is the day and age, and it's always been that way, but it's just more and more and more. So you have to be creative, and getting involved. Your social media is so important nowadays. I've talked more artists into, engaging in social media who are so reluctant to do it, and not in some cheesy way. Keep it real. Keep it intelligent. I often would use two of my clients, one of my former clients. Jason Isbell over here, who I worked with for 10 years, and Bahamas over here, and Jason sort of mastered the social media thing early on, and not in a contrived way. He just did what he did, and it caught on because he had thoughtful, intelligent correspondence with people. Whereas A.P. Yurvinen from Bahamas was so reluctant to do it that he did it in a very irreverent, self-deprecating way, and it was freaking hilarious. Yet both worked, and they both weren't necessarily tricks. So I would use those as polar opposite ends of ways to approach it. So I think and this is about PR, so I don't want to spend too much time on social media, but find your voice there. Every artist should find their voice and not look at hey, here's our new single. Engage in conversation. It doesn't have to be socio-political. It doesn't have to be earth-shaking. It could just be, this is a great pastrami sandwich. Who likes pastrami?
Yes.
Vegans, beware.
yeah, people do want that insight to your personal life.
Yeah,
Man.
that's a big part of, what I think PR is now anyway. What was the initial point of that question before I went?
Just some tips for folks who can't quite afford to
Oh,
hire a
thank you.
professional yet. What else can
I
they
have
do?
talked more people through the years out of not hiring me and not hiring anybody. And this may be against us, but the truth is, I don't want to take anybody's money, big or small, until they're ready for that spot. And I tell them first and foremost, they'll call and go, hey, we want to hire you. We have a budget. They say, we have an investor, the I word. Red flag goes up. Red flag,
Totally, yes.
and I say, have you toured? No, we're big in Sheboygan. or whatever. And I tell everyone, you need an agent 99% of the time more than you need PR. Even if you're touring regionally or you're touring a coast or something like that, prior to COVID did change a lot. I, for the most part, wouldn't even get involved with artists who don't have agents. Not because there's some elitist thing, but I felt like, especially artists that don't have a mainstream vehicle, radio, or a giant label behind them, there's only so much PR can do leading up to the release of an album. You get it to that point, and then what? My big question to them is, what are we doing the following Monday? I've been saying that for years, even when it used to be, Tuesdays. But what are we doing after that? And the touring for most artists, especially artists in the Americana genre, is everything. You have to convey what you're doing. You have to convey that live experience, and you have to give that audience a reason to follow you. And I don't mean on social media. I mean in every possible way. You have to move them. You have to connect with them. I overuse the word connect like crazy because I think it's massively important. Because ultimately, stripping all of our jobs away, we're all music fans, right? Isn't that why we kind of got into this in the first place? Before we got as jaded as I am. But it's the truth. We're all music geeks, and we got moved by things to move into this area and various areas to work in this. So ultimately, it all circles back to some of those fundamentals. So what I would say is, let me shift the question a little bit, which is why, people often ask me, what's my criteria for taking on a client, artist, I like the term artist so much better. But it begins with the music. And Jay, not to counter you, but it does for me. I'm old school, and I still have this idealistic thing that the music matters, and because it does. And so it starts with what you create. I know there's some artists in the room, but it starts with the music. And it's always going to start with the music with me. It's always going to begin and end there. No one is going to get, and I want to say this to make sure it's perfectly clear, nobody, the greatest publicists on the planet, are not going to get you great press on a shitty album. It's not going to happen.
Are you saying you can't polish your toes?
I wanted to say it, a little, but it's true. And that is if there's no lightning in a bottle and there's no giant radio thing, there's no TikTok revolution on your song or something like that. I should have prefaced this by saying, despite anything anybody says on this panel or any panel, there is no absolute in this business. So you have to find your own way and you have to carve it out. So it begins with the music. But the second most important thing, and we touched on this a little bit, the music is number one, the narrative is 1A. And I don't mean creating or fabricating any kind of narrative. What is it about that artist that's going to separate them? Marissa's getting 5,000 emails a week from people like me, and how's she going to respond to all of those? You have to think about what the journalist is going through. Think about the bandwidth of that outlet, if it still exists or if it's hanging by a thread, what's happening. What is it about this artist? Dig into the music. Are they writing substantive music? I worked in a lot of different genres, I still do, but that has everything to do with this, create that narrative. So do we like the music is the first reason to take something on. The second reason, and this is even more important, do we have a vision for what we think we can do here? And even if you have that vision, if you see, okay, I can see this doing this or that or whatever, it's still not exact. So you got to believe in it. You got to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it and understand who these artists are because you're their voice out there. Some of these people are paying you out of their pockets, gig to gig, even small labels. They don't have a ton of money. And for what it's worth, the major labels are cheaper than the smaller labels. You'd be amazed. And the third thing, which is really important, is who's involved. I mentioned the booking agent, and the reason, we've gotten more press through the years, not just us, any good publicist. Often we'll get more press through the years after an album comes out, once the artist is touring, building them market by market. That's what you want. You want to go to Cleveland and play to 50 people. The next time you go, you want to play to 75, 150, 200, 300. And all the work that's being done is building you up in those markets while also building your national campaign. And it doesn't happen overnight. It does not happen overnight. But with the people involved, it isn't just an agent. And this is vital. This is quality of life. This is managing expectations. Do the people, I don't need a big team. I don't need Irving Azoff. We need an intelligent manager, experienced or not. You need an agent, which is key. You need some people working in the digital space for them. And the most important thing is, with the artists and with that team, do we all share the same vision? That is everything. Somebody could have a lot of money. They could be a big, great artist. We passed up many situations where the expectations, everyone not being on the same page, would have been a nightmare. And it's just don't get involved with that. Don't be seduced by that from any side of it. Full disclosure, and I make the joke all the time, no one on either side of my family has lost their hair. This is the music industry. And it's not an exaggeration. But when you work with people who share the same vision, those little victories along the way, especially in the Americana space, they're amazing. You know, you get to this point where you get that, what TV bookings are so few and far between, but you get that little thing where that artist wrote something, or that journalist wrote something special about the artist, and they get it. And you get a high from it because you helped out with it. You know, everybody's involved. These people are, we treat the music like this, these are their babies. And they are. You know, I couldn't create something and put it out to the world to be judged. You know, which is why I'm sitting here, because I don't have that talent.
Oh, you. No, that was great. Thank you. So on that note, just about in terms of expectations, Jay, do you want to address what a record label's expectations are of PR? How does PR fit in with your general scheme and stuff? And I do know, I'm not going to name names, but I know that there happens to be someone on your label who doesn't technically have a booking agent, but still manages to get some gigs. And for me, you know, Mr. Bigwig, most of his people have agents, but you know, I always joke. No, I'm just teasing you. Not all of them. I'm teasing you. No, but I always say you can hire any monkey to do your press or your radio, but to get an agent is like the golden key. But you know, with these guys, for example, which is why I asked them to join. You know, I saw there was something. They had Moxie. They were like booking a ton of shows, and you know, so what if it's small gigs? They were booking from coast to coast on their own. So I knew that they wanted, and I know it's just a matter of time. You know, but again, I agree with Jim. You know. If I don't like the vocal, I don't care. And I don't care if it's a big artist. I don't, you know, and if I had a phone call with someone who was a big artist and, you know, and they were closeted and I didn't feel good about that. I didn't like the fact that this person was closeted. And I was just like, you know what? Sorry, got to turn it down. So, sorry. So back to you, Jay, just if you could address this a bit.
Sure. First, even before I would bring in a conversation about what my expectations of a publicist would be, it actually starts with us as a label. And the artists that we talk to, if we're working with them or not working with them, the big challenge for me is when it's kind of going what Jim said. It's like, I agree with you that there is music, obviously, it's got to be about the music. And I come at it from, if the artist doesn't want to live and breathe their music, then they shouldn't do it. And what I mean by that is that's what my expectation is. If I'm going to work with an artist, and trust me, I have found that I've done a lot of reissues, and now I get bombarded, not nearly like you get bombarded, but I get bombarded by artists every week. Hey man, love you, put out this record. Well, that's great. Like, who are you, first of all? Secondly, why me? Does it match? I had a Christian artist reach out to me and said, I love your roster. I'm like, you do? Okay. But it was the expectation of what the artist is. So to the artists in the room, when you're reaching out to anybody inside the industry, you should understand who you're speaking with. And if you don't reach out to them. Like, it's crazy. Why would you reach out to somebody if you didn't know who you're talking to, right? But on the other side of that, if an artist comes to me and says, this is what I think and has a vision for what they want, it changes the conversation because then I can go, okay, can I support that? Is this something that I want to jump on board with? Am I excited by that? And look, we're a small label. I have 5 of us on the team and we're maxed out because I don't just do the label. I have to do other things because the label obviously is not going to be a huge moneymaker. It's more of a passion project. So if I'm a passion project, I want the artist to understand it's a passion project. So if they come to me and expect, I want to sell 1 million records, it's like, we're the wrong label for you. But what do you want out of your career? And what are you building the team with? And so that starts. When we reach out to someone like Wendy, it's definitely a matter of, okay, we know that we can do this, we have blocking and tackling, but I can't translate the conversation from inside my sphere to the outside world, looking for that narrative, looking for the people to speak to, like the Marissas of the world. And so I would link up with Wendy and I could speak to projects that we've worked on. The thing that I knew when I wanted to come to you about projects, I know that we're going to have a conversation. It's going to say, here's what we're thinking creatively. Here's what we're thinking marketing-wise. Here's what we're thinking release. Here's what we're thinking tour. And I always say, I know you've heard me say this, I want to give you the best chance of success. Because I've been on the other side of those conversations where I don't come to the table that way. And I feel that I have done a disservice in the past maybe 10 years to some projects that I've taken on where I expected too much of the publicist. And it was a learning game for me to go, oh, you know, the old guard is gone in that sense where you had tons of writers that were gainfully employed with a specific outlet. And it was like, oh yeah, I got to fill these spaces. Like, oh great. Well now, so many great writers are now freelanced. They don't have a steady gig. So they're going to have to pick and choose what they're doing, but it's harder for you guys to place slots. So it's the same type of thing where working with a publicist, I say, hey, I'm going to give you as much ammo as I can, but it's going to have to be an ongoing conversation. Because I know that you're going to blast out that news report or a press release, and it's like, okay, did you get any traction? And then what else is next? And what else is next? And it's a constant conversation is, what do you need from me? What's coming on? And I'm constantly giving Wendy updates of this tour date's been added, or she's asking me, can we get a date added here? And so my expectation of working with the publicist is that they are joining my team and they are part of that team. And if I don't treat it as we are equals on a team, then I'm not serving that team to the best of my ability. And like I said, I've made mistakes in the past where I've expected that. I've worked at a major label before, and I saw even internal people at a major label be treated like absolute dog shit because it was like, you're not doing enough. It's like, you didn't give them enough team building. You didn't give them enough of a narrative. And so you're forcing certain publicists, and full disclosure, I've worked with publicists that have no writing capability. And they say, I can't write worth a crap, but I'm a communicator and I can help communicate your story. I'm like, I respect that. So then it's like, hey, then who do we get to hire to write our bio? Who do we get to hire to write our press release? You're going to be the person pushing this, but we have to make sure that that's a crafted thing, because when it does land in an inbox to somebody like Marissa, she's going to read it and say, oh, I get this. Okay, now I'm interested. And it's, once again, you have that one chance. If you blast somebody, they might look at it and there's 15 emails behind them, they just move on. So my expectation to your initial question was that it is a team atmosphere, and I can't expect you to move mountains, especially if I don't give you the ammo to fire it best you can.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people think, oh, boom, get that premiere up, boom, do it, but Jay's an experienced professional. He knows to have adequate setup time and lead time and whatnot. So yeah, with all of this stuff out there and the thousands and hundreds, whatever, in your inbox, how do you cut through the clag? How do you do it, Marissa? What do you like to see? What don't you like? Fill us in. And talk about angles and hooks and what a pitch means to folks who may be indie artists and don't know, what is the pitch? What does this mean?
Yeah. Okay, that's a big question.
I know, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yes, Marissa, tell us.
Take it in part. I mean,
Agenda.
no, but it's a good question. I mean, what we were talking about earlier, and do I read emails from artists that don't have publicists? Of course, and think any good freelancer would do that. But what you were also mentioning was that there gets to be a ceiling, I think, where you can't do everything on your own. And if you have the budget for PR, it obviously is very helpful, because we have relationships with publicists, and publicists have different, just like I'm looking for angles and I'm looking for a certain type of artist, I know Jim is going to have a certain kind of, he might have something that I'm interested. He always knows what I'm interested in. He has a certain type of artist that he works with. You'll have a different type, like you have relationships not just with the music that you're listening to, but with the publicists. And so it does, especially for freelancers, I think we have a little bit more room to go and sift through emails and find little gems and bring it to our editors. But for my editors that are on staff, I think that's a different thing. I think they're going to be a lot harder to crack if you're an independent artist and you don't have a publicist. So probably your best bet is to find someone like me, a freelancer, and not try to find someone on staff at, so-and-so publication and just pitch them cold, because they're probably just not going to have time for it. It's really a bandwidth thing. It's not a personal thing. But how do I sift through all of the emails, I guess, is the question. I mean, I get probably in a day, and I think most journalists in a day you can get thousands in a day. You can get a lot. And it's hard. It's hard to get through everything. And I would like to say that I go through and I listen to every album that comes my way. It's totally impossible. I'd be bullshitting you if I said that. And I think it all comes back to what we were saying earlier, is I look for, obviously I want to like the music and I want to support the artist and believe in what they're doing. That's why we all got into this. But I also have to bring a story to my outlets. And I write mostly features. I don't do a lot of, most people don't these days. We're not doing premieres. We're not doing like little blurbs. That kind of stuff is disappearing, at least from my perspective. So I'm looking for features, in-depth features or reported pieces, trend pieces. But when it comes to artists, mostly a feature, someone I can take to my editors at Rolling Stone or the Times or wherever and say, I have this really great story. So that's what I'm looking for when I'm scanning through my email. I'm trying to find something interesting, something that is either like reflective of the current climate. Obviously, the music comes first. I think that's sort of the, the unsaid thing here that brought us all here. But I'm looking through for that story. So if you're blasting me, and plus I'm freelance, so I can't take the same story to my editors at, so-and-so publication that either they're getting from people, or if I know someone's going out and pitching the same angle to a million other places, I'm not interested. Because I can't take an exclusive to my editors at the Times if someone else is already taking that there. So in the way, and I tell this to a lot of artists when they ask me, I think a lot of things, sorry if I'm rambling on here, but the way that the press is constructed now is that I don't think you need to blast a million things out there. I don't think you need 50 articles. I think you need one really good article with a journalist that believes in what you're doing and that gets your story. And then if it's good, everyone will steal from it, they'll aggregate it, they'll tweet it, they'll whatever, they'll share it, and then other people will get interested. So focus on getting that one really great piece that everything will trickle from. Because I think that makes it more interesting to the journalist, more interesting to the editor that's going to assign it, and then everyone else gets interested. So I think it's more about that one like really good quality piece, and then everything else comes next.
Great. Do you like to see visuals in email pitches? Would you like to see photos? Obviously not attachments. Attachments are kind of obnoxious unless it's something you've requested. But do you like that, or you don't really care?
I mean, no, not really. I mean, I really like a dream pitch for me is like 2 or 3 paragraphs max. Like, tell me why this is interesting to me, why like show that you know kind of what I do and that we can work together well in this, and why it's interesting. And then attach the music. Don't make me look for it. Like, here's what I'm thinking we could do together, what the story is. Here's why it's interesting. Here's what the music sounds like and why it's really great. Here's the link, a couple details on, so-and-so's touring somewhere, and that's it. Like, I get so much stuff that's like, 10 paragraphs and attachments and attach the press release and here's 50 links and here are 10 artists that this person sounds like. I can't deal with that. I don't care. Even like a really long, it's so nitpicky and silly, but I'll get these subject lines in emails that have emojis and that are like 400 words long. And I'm like, I can't deal with that. I don't have time. Just tell me the story and tell me why the music's good and we'll get out of here really fast.
Cool. Now, have you ever, and just, I get the sense definitely you are absolutely a leader and not a follower, but have you ever like caught wind of like, oh my gosh, I just read this, feature in the New Yorker and like, wow, I kind of wasn't really familiar with this person. Has that ever happened to you being a journalist? Because you're saying that, yeah, sometimes like you place a piece in the Times or Rolling Stone and then other people follow suit and go, oh man, why did I not know about this artist? Has that ever happened to you that you found someone that way?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's why I became a journalist.
Right. Because you're like, oh, this sounds amazing. I got
Yeah.
to check this out. Okay.
I'm not a musician. I never wanted to be. I just always wanted to be a writer, and I love music. And so that's how I found music.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for sure, I think even journalists are scanning those things, not just potential fans.
Yeah.
Can I add to
Oh, I would love for you to add. Go on.
Marissa said? And she's right about the majority of what she said, but also about that one article. I just want to sort of define that a little more from the back end. That one article could be great, depending on who wrote it and, well, really where it's published. Getting that one article is very difficult. So don't put all your eggs in that basket. It's like if there's a New York Times piece, if there's a great Pitchfork review or all the places everyone wants to be, yes, she's 100% right. Things could trickle down from there and that becomes a tool that you can use moving forward. But getting to that point, you're a brand new artist. The New York Times is not doing a story on you. The Rolling Stone's not doing a story on you. It's just, you have to get to that point, you have to build it. And one of the most important, and I want to make sure this is said before we, finish when we're talking about PR, one of the biggest uses for music PR these days, and it's always been this way, but it's still valid, is building that portfolio, if you will, for the artist, of validation. It's great that there's all the social media. It's great this influencer loved you. But if Marissa Moss writes something wonderful about your record, you're adding that to your portfolio. You're building the validation and building yourself up. You have to start somewhere, there are certain terms I hate. One of them is low-hanging fruit. I've never believed in that term when there was a ton of media. I think it's all part of it. It's all part of it for every single artist because you have to start somewhere when you don't have a big machine, radio promotion, all the stuff behind you. It starts somewhere. I think every artist I work with, for the most part, has started that way, and just about every single one of them, from Shovels and Rope to whomever, they started playing in front of 20 people, and it was a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. And that validation takes time to build, and you use it to build the next thing, and the next thing, and to the next album. And to circle back on, just for a moment, on the agent thing, I don't care if someone has a big agent or an agent that can book them in one city. The idea is, whether they have an agent or not, I have a lot of artists who have booked themselves. Get out and play. I mean, it changes everything. And it really is important to take all those, as I mentioned little victories before, but those little victories could be a review, I don't want to name any publications, but a review in a small publication that goes to the right demographic. And in this day and age, more than ever before, I mean, I have, I'll call them top level, A-level artists, whatever, that I'm having do smaller things because it's going to the right people. So if this one outlet or this one podcast goes to 10,000 people, but it's the right 10,000 people, then and it's an intelligent interviewer. By the way, matching an artist up with the right person to interview them is key. Makes the artist feel better about what you do, makes the artist feel better about what they do, and there's a connection there. But that podcast or that whatever it is, it could be a radio thing, a small regional NPR affiliate, connecting with the right people, small amount, large amount. You need more. I hate the term impressions too. I hate a lot of things, but the impressions are important, and they do build. And building to get to that one article that could change a lot of things. But it does take a lot more impressions these days, and it does put a lot of the onus on the artist to do more work. And being their own advocate. I think it was Jay who said, the artist has to really believe in what they're doing and really be willing to work. I've fortunately been involved with a lot of artists who've worked their asses off. And we had a tribute to Mary Gaucher last night. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mary Gaucher, but I can spend a whole panel just talking about her. One of the hardest working artists with the most integrity and an incredible human being that I've ever come across in my life. And she still plays to 200-300 people a night. And she's still out there working her ass off. Yet Emmylou Harris and Rodney Crowell are out there paying tribute to her last night. That she's, that's perseverance. That's believing what you do. That's maintaining a level of integrity. And just as an example of what you can do, you don't have to be playing in Madison Square Garden. It'd be nice. But, you could be playing in these little places. You can have a small booking agent that just helps you out. You can do all these little things. But getting the right people to believe in what you're doing and not trying to rip you off is really important.
Can I add something?
Please.
To what you're saying? So another thing that we do, this is kind of off of PR, but it's, man, when you're touring, it's the same with us. We play big rooms, small rooms. We play, sometimes, you're still winning market in town. Sometimes you're playing, your market where you've built a fan base, and sometimes you're trying to win over a new market. But don't be that band that hides out in the green room like you're a rock star when you have a handful. Go out and talk to people. Hang out by your merch table. Find that fan that loves you to death and befriend that person, because that will be your street team. That person will let everybody in town know you're coming to town. Don't be a rock star. Go hang out. Be humble. Talk to people. Thank them for coming. Have a drink with them. Do whatever. Hang around after the show and talk to people. Don't think you're a rock
Yeah.
star and go get in the van and
That's
get too.
yeah, I wanted to add that too, with what he was saying was, I think one of the most important things as an artist is authenticity and your connection with your fans. Willie and I really worked hard on that, even as far as like every single comment, every single message on social media, I would immediately respond. My phone was always in my hand. But people got to a point where they knew us for that. They knew, oh, if I comment on this, something from the Waymores, I'm absolutely going to get that connection back.
Yeah.
And I think that like with what Jim was saying, if, having people believe in you, even if it is like a small team at first, you're going to be the first person that believes in you. And to go and show the reason why to your fans, I think is incredibly important.
And that's before you need a restraining order.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my gosh, this is so great. For our last 15 minutes, I would love to open it up for questions. If anyone has any questions of the panel, if no one does, we can continue, just chatting. But I've got my mic here. Please, sir, come on in. Take the mic. Oh, yeah. Hey, tell us who you are so we can get to know you.
Alonzo Walton, I'm a music lawyer out of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Hi, Alonzo.
Just curious, what kind of stories do you like to tell the most about town? Which ones get you excited to tell?
Yeah.
Okay, so my question was, what stories does she like to tell the most? What gets her excited?
Yeah, and I mean, I'll answer that in the context of knowing which stories are going to get picked up and excite my editors. Because, of course, I think all of us would initially say, oh, I just want to tell a story about a great album and a great artist. Of course, that's true. But I have to sell the story to my editors. So the types of stories that excite me, because I know they're also going to excite my editors these days, have some sort of cultural context, I think, in the music. And it doesn't have to be political. Not everyone has to get involved with politics. I don't really like taking an album and making it into some sort of clickbait headline anyway. I don't think that's fair. But I think having something to say and reflect on about the world around you that's not just the music. And that, like I said, doesn't have to be politics, doesn't have to be culture. It can be something, human that you've experienced in your life, be it like loss or struggle or, triumph, some kind of human story. So that's sort of the angle that I'm looking for, because I know that it's going to help me make a more exciting story for my editors. I really love to take a piece, and this is maybe more personal to me and not even so much my editors. I really love to write a story that shows you a different side of an artist, or if you're an up and coming artist, maybe a type of music than what people have assumed before. So if I can convince someone to pick up and listen to an album or an artist that they thought that they didn't like or dismissed, I really love doing that. And I think that makes a great story. Or like I said, if you're an up and coming artist and you don't have that story out there, if you can flip a narrative about a type of music or something that you're writing or singing about, I think that's really interesting too. So there's lots of different ways to approach finding that angle and that I look for, but it always sort of ends up being in that kind of category.
Thank you. Oh, we've got,
over here.
can we pass the mic? Yeah, great, thank you. Can you tell us who you are, sir?
Hi, Daniel Kemish. I'm an original artist based over in Europe. I put out a record last April, so a year and a half ago. And I originally sent it out, it was a completely analog record. So the recording to vinyl was and across continents, which didn't make it that easy. But then I did a tour sort of in the UK in March this year, and I had actually a good friend of mine who helped push some publication stuff out. And a lot of the feedback we had was that it was over 6 months old. People wouldn't honor it as a new record. So what sort of length of time is a record valid for nowadays? I mean, everyone's talking singles. I know singles, but I'm an album guy. We do an album, you do the first track to the end track because that's the way you need to listen to a record. So how long is a record sort of valid in terms of PR?
Can I answer that? Can I jump in on that one? Not that I have the exact answer, but what I've found is that and this is not old news, or new news, I should say. Most outlets are going to tie something into a timeline. They want a peg. They want to know they're tying it into this time when this record comes out. That's why, it isn't absolute, but it's pretty close. I have, I won't name the projects, but we've had projects where someone needed to get a record out for various reasons, and they got it out to their fan base, a vinyl. But we just didn't, it's not a trick. It's just, we just told them, okay, well, we're going to do a 3-month campaign. We're going to lead to this point, even though your fan base already has it. Nobody knows who you are, and the journalists don't care at this point. We want to make them care. So there are different ways to do it, but I can think of really only one time that I got involved with a project that had been out for a very long time, and the circumstances were right. The expectations were here, because we had to be honest about it. But it's hard to get involved later. If your album's out in Europe, but it's not out in the US, even though everything's digital, everything's out anyway, and you can bring someone on that could go out there and tell your story, and you're not lying or tricking anybody, then maybe you can make it work. But ideally, you want to get someone involved a little bit in advance. And, to that lead time question, the old school way was we used to start projects 3, 4, 5 months in advance because of long lead press. For anybody under 40, long lead press means things that had a lead time, like magazines of, like Garden and Gun works 5, 6 months in advance. Esquire would work 3, 4 months in advance, for example. There isn't as much long lead press. So we don't need quite the amount of lead time, but at the same time, you can't start a PR campaign 30 days before a record and expect things. Because the journalists, like I was saying before, are getting inundated. They need to know in advance so they could kind of, I wouldn't say put you in a queue, but sort of say, okay, I don't have to think about that one for a little while, but I'm hearing about it. And there's a lot of work publicists do in advance. There's a ton of work publicists do that isn't tangible. Whether it's leading up to a record, letting people know about an album, planting seeds for the next few albums. Again, I could cite a million different times that those seeds planted flourish over a period of time with various artists. It still works. It's not a trick. It's just, it's getting involved. That's why people who want to change teams all of a sudden, the continuity you have can really throw things off. So I don't know if that answers your question, but,
Yeah, I mean,
and I don't want that to make it seem like it's hopeless as you have your record out. Don't stop. Go play.
Just,
we had a bunch of people that picked the record up, actually.
Good.
As like instead of a story, like a backstory, like sometimes you come across a record.
Yes.
But it was, I mean, that was because of this guy who had the contacts. I wasn't directly working with him, but he was like, email these guys, so you know me.
Yeah. Again, no absolutes.
just to add to that as an artist, the only way to extend the life of your album is touring. Is touring.
Touring.
If you're out there still, like our album came out last August.
Yeah.
So it's just over a year old. We're still touring for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not getting a lot of press.
Yeah.
There's
And
not
now,
write-ups about the album.
press is
but they're-
done with
yeah.
it, but the album's still
Yeah.
selling.
Yeah.
And you are your best distributor of physical
Yeah.
media. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We sell a ton of vinyl. You know what? You know what doesn't sell? CDs. Nobody
Yeah.
cares about CDs.
Don't bother with
anymore.
those.
We give them away.
It depends on the country.
Yeah.
but For sure, we did sell a lot.
Agree with that.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
What's your experience? Tell us.
The last year, we have sold on par even with both.
Wow.
Oh, really?
Really?
Right on, man.
It blows my mind that I'm
We sell
selling
a
CDs.
load of vinyl.
Oh, man, we get.
Now, I also have a 19-year-old daughter who asked if she could go through my CDs. I'm like, absolutely. And so I started asking her, well, what's going on? She's like, well, I love vinyl. You know that. I love vinyl. She's like, but I can't afford it. I can't afford
Yes,
Yeah.
so expensive.
it. So the younger, her friends buy CDs because he can buy it.
Yeah.
I'm also talking for this teacher mentality, asking all my friends, show of hands here, who has bought a CD in the last 6 months? Okay.
Wow, you are wrong.
So I have
We
to add the
never
caveat.
sell.
It's also going to be genre specific. It's also going to be venue specific. It's going to be, I know people will go to a show and if they don't have the money, but they have $10 in their pocket, they'd much rather buy a CD than walk away. And especially if you're standing there with a Sharpie. I've worked a merch booth for 15 years. If you don't have a Sharpie in your hand, you're not selling product.
Yeah.
But yeah, vinyl's going to sell, especially, and I'm also a label guy, I always make really funky looking vinyl. So I know I'm going to do whatever it takes to have really cool looking vinyl. But don't be afraid, CDs, man.
Okay, we
They're-
put
they're
them out.
still on the table.
They're still on the
They
table.
just
We
don't
just don't
sell
sell
as
a lot
much.
of
Yeah.
them. But you know, we do have a lot of people ask us if we have cassettes.
Yeah, those are making it come back.
That is why, what is
don't do
happening?
That's not going to last. It's not, I'm sorry.
Hi, yeah. My name's Andy Benson. I work with a team called Lock and Key Productions. We started as a video production company in Knoxville. We've since added a marketing firm. But in the music world, we primarily focus on music festival marketing. But we've done a lot of EPKs over the years, live video recordings, music videos. I'm really curious from the PR sense and when you're launching press campaigns, how much are you leaning on specifically EPKs, but also just in general that digital media, specifically video, to get things off the ground?
Well, every situation is different. And I mean, that's the answer to everything, by the way. You can't treat every single artist and album the exact same way. So, content is king in these days. It's used in a certain way. Can you launch a campaign and have a sexual?
What are you thinking about?
Yes, you can.
Successful campaign without content? Yes, you can. But it certainly helps. And my wife works in video. She's in the room. I don't point her out to embarrass her right now. And that area is changing. The money people spend on budgets for videos is changing. You don't need a $50,000 video. You need some good content. It could be anything. I mean, again, it depends on the situation. When we launch an album campaign, we think it's always great to launch with a track. Because of the day and age we live in. Have something you can tie it to. Everyone's looking for pickup. No one can control pickup. So, I still, again, I have one foot in the new world, one foot in the old world, where when somebody gets that press release, it's going to the press. It's not going to the consumer. So you're trying to turn the press on, and in their mind, start thinking about this artist. Now, whether they post that track or not is one thing. Whether they listen to that track and it's tattooed on their brain is another, where you're building to try to get some press around the album. The same with content. If you have a great piece of content, video, a great performance, stuff like that, I think it's all valid. It depends on the artist. So I think it all plays in. There is no more than one way to skin a cat. Bad topic these days. Now I'm thinking about that.
Oh, yeah.
But know who the artist is, what they need, what is expressing what their art is, what is conveying that forward, what is moving that forward. If it's not moving it forward, if it's not doing something that's going to enhance what the artist is putting out there, then think twice about it.
No lyric videos.
Jay, any comments? Sorry, no lyric videos I can't stand.
I was just gonna say that I make it a point because I always do think of two things. I'm always thinking internal fans and external fans. So internal fans are industry people. They're the people that I'm trying to attract, like Marissa or even Wendy's trying to attract, where it's like, what can we tell the story of? Well, I want them to see what I'm talking about, because sometimes they're not gonna press play on audio, but maybe a visual will represent something that catches their eye. They're like, wait, they're interesting looking, or that's an interesting way they're telling the story, or whatever. And then the external fans are the fans that you're playing to every night, and you're trying to get their attention. That's content that you can share that fans want to see. They want to see behind the scenes. They want to see that. So I'm always wanting content, and I always want a visual, but I also am tempering with to whom I'm serving that video to, what's the purpose of it. And then budgets, yeah. I mean, I spent $1,000 on a video, which to me was really a lot of money for my budget,
Yeah.
which is not a lot of money, but it worked. It was the DVs. It was this beautiful video handmade by an artist that I knew, and I said, I think you'll serve this song. Your visual will serve this song. It was a reissue. And I will say, I was very
That was a
proud
good
of it.
deal.
It
Good
was
job.
a great
On the
deal, but also
opposite-
it looks amazing.
On the opposite end of that, we spent 10 grand on a video and it didn't work.
Yeah.
So there really isn't like a pattern for it.
And also, there's not one way to use it. Sometimes we'll have, as publicists, and Wendy knows this, we'll get marketing folks say, we got all this content, where are we going to premiere it? That's not what that's for, and especially right now. But it can be used a lot of different ways. It could be in the announcement of a single, announcement of an album. It can be used, like I've seen content that they had no intention to use for anything. I go, this is beautiful. I want to use this in my pitching. Or they use it on their social medias, or use it when pitching tour press. And there is no one way to use it if it's good, or if it's even specific. Again, look at the situation, look at the ways to use anything you create that's going to draw back to, what the artist is trying to convey.
I think we have time for one more quickie. If right in front here, we have this gent in front. Thank you. No problem.
I'm not surprised by the conversation with CDs versus vinyl albums. This is Americana after all.
Yeah.
It's an older age group, but I'm curious if any of you have any thoughts one way or another. I know a couple of people who are artists who are just getting into flash drives. Anybody know anybody who's doing that, or?
Some.
So we have.
I can't get rid of CDs.
We have
anymore.
one
Nobody
flash
has
drive
CD
that
players.
it looks like a cassette, and then you pull it in. But it's got footage, like behind the scenes footage of us on the road. It's got albums, just a lot
Interviews.
of different footage and the album.
Content on it.
So
We do sell a
we
handful.
sell a handful of those, but I wouldn't put it anywhere near even the CDs or the vinyl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yes, real quick, go ahead. Yeah, please.
I was just gonna ask if there's you sort of asked if there's a point when you know that you need to get PR and start asking and sort of on that imposter syndrome, when did y'all kind of realize that it was time to move forward and not, you take it between that night.
You're asking us?
I felt like our reach had reached its limit. I felt like we had made the connections that we could make on our own, and our
weren't
first
growing.
album, it is when you can afford it, but we're artists, so that's never going to happen. So it's when you want your album to make a dent. Another client of Wendy's had a song in her lyric that said, what was it?
If you're,
Record drops, it
doesn't make- yeah.
If it's
Records.
something about if your record drops and it doesn't make a sound.
yeah.
So when you want your record to make a sound and to make a dent, that's when
We
you're
were already touring 150 off our first album, 152 days a year across the country, all over, and we had plateaued. We could not get to another level. And a friend of ours is pretty established. He's kind of a mentor. He's the one that said, you got to save a quarter from every dollar for press because if your record drops and does,
Yeah.
people, you can only do so
It's,
much.
if no one hears your record drop, it doesn't.
Doesn't make a
That
sound,
was
that's
the-
what it is, yeah.
Jesus, that's.
So, but we,
It's
we-
early still, right?
we finagled and borrowed from family and took from savings and got the money together for a campaign with Wendy, and it, to the next rung. I mean,
Yeah.
it really took us, it really helped our career.
Because all of y'all know who we are.
Well, I think we're about time. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Wonderful questions, great panel. We appreciate all of you. Have a great Americana Fest.
Thank y'all.